Good afternoon. I'm making this tutorial because I had a hard time getting this working, but now that I did it, I think going through it start to end is going to be helpful for people. Now, a few caveats. I'm not a professional. I have no clue what I'm doing, and everything that I say in this tutorial is just my learnings, and you should not trust what I'm saying. I will say something that is wrong. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have HDR enabled on your system. So for this tutorial, it only applies to Linux. I don't know how to do it in Windows. I don't even know if this works in Windows. But I'm going to go to my display configuration, and I want to make sure that HDR is enabled. And you also want to go through all the calibration procedures. So this includes calibrating your HDR brightness and also doing color calibration if that is something that you need to do on your monitor. It's recommended generally. I haven't done it because what I'm doing is not important, but if you're doing something important, you should calibrate. The next thing you want to do is make sure that your monitor is in its reference color mode. This means that it will not distort colors when you're editing. Instead, it will just clip. Most HDR modes, like game or movie or media, those will all have a tone map curve, and your colors will be inaccurate. Now, my monitor is a Display HDR 400 True Black, so it's not great, but it's enough for me to kind of learn and play around with this. That's what you need to do. Secondly, you also need to be using Blender 5.0 or newer. I'm using the latest alpha release because 5.0 is not out yet. And then thirdly, you want to make sure that you add the correct color space. So in this case, go to your Blender install folder. I have it just downloaded. Go to 5.0, data files, color management, and there's this OCIO file. This is your config. I have it opened here. I'm shooting on a Sony a6700 camera, so that's the footage that I'm getting is in the ACESlog3 cine format. So this GitHub repository, OpenColor.io config ACES, has a profile for my camera. I scroll down to Sony, you can see the ACESlog3 is here. You do not want the linear, and you may want the not cine format. I don't know the difference between the two. I just kind of picked one. I downloaded this file here, and in this file, there's a lot of the profiles, but I just did a search for ACESlog3, and I found the right one here with this name. It seems to reference some AWS bucket for it, but this all ended up working. All I needed to do was copy this, go into my config file here, and then at the top, there'll be a bunch of stuff. There'll be like roles, displays. I went to color spaces, and I slapped it right here. Hit save on this, and then you're good to go. All right, after you've added your color space, the next thing to do is to open Blender. We'll do that here. As you can see, I'm on Blender 5 Alpha. Here's my version. I'm running on Wayland, which is a requirement for HDR. What you need to do is go to Preferences, System, and then make sure your display graphics are set to Vulkan. You'll probably need to restart Blender after changing this setting. Then hop over to Video Editing, and we're going to go to Edit. The reason this is important is because all of our settings to color spaces and whatnot will not be preserved if this isn't set correctly. What you need to do now is go to Render, Color Management, make sure your display is set to 2100 PQ or HLG. I prefer PQ generally. Set your file space to ACEScg. Now, I actually don't know what this does internally. The Blender docs really didn't help me understand it any better. And the important bit is that it seems like you want it to match. You either want it on Rec 2020 or ACEScg for HDR workflows. So I'm just going to select ACEScg. I've used both, the Rec 2020 and whatever. I can't tell the difference. The most important bit is you want to make sure sequencer is also set to Rec 2100, whatever you have in your display. Make sure your view is set to standard and your look is set to none. I've navigated over to the tutorial folder where I have a clip that I filmed on my camera. This will update the project settings, so I'm going to configure that quickly. 23.98. I filmed at 120 FPS for these clips, so I want to export at 24. Now, you'll notice that, let me just cut this up quick. Make a short clip. You'll notice that the colors look all washed out. This is standard for log footage. So what we need to do is we need to open this side panel. So you want to grab from the side here and drag it out. Source. Now make sure you select the color space of the video clip, not your output color space. When I do this, you'll notice all the colors brighten up and they look accurate now. In the recording here, I'm not recording in HDR and it's not doing any correct tone mapping. I couldn't figure out how to get OBS to do it correctly. So you'll just get to see overexposed colors. On my screen, that is not what I'm seeing. I am seeing bright but not overexposed colors. So you want to make sure that your display is also showing the same thing. If it's overexposed, you probably have something wrong in your scene color management settings or inside of your clip. Now, very basic color management stuff. I'm not an expert, again. I'm doing this for fun. You want to go to brightness and contrast, color balance, whatever you want, right? All of these things, we can adjust our white balance. This clip is pretty well white balanced, all the things. However, I'm going to play with the brightness and contrast a little bit for this example. So this is a bright day scene. Our hotspots here, these reflections specifically, are nearly directly reflected sunlight. Same thing with the eye here. So they're quite bright. And we're still pretty solidly within like an SDR space. I want to brighten this up and really like show off the colors. In this case, this is for a demo. Generally, when you're doing a color grade, you want to pick all your colors to appropriately match and all your brightnesses. Now, we have no reference other than just looking at our output here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this over and clone this preview panel. Up in the top right here, I can change this to Luma waveform, and this will give us an idea of the actual scale of our colors in the image. So you'll notice it goes from 0 to 1. This doesn't display the absolute nit values for the color space we're in, but I think it would go from 0 to 10,000. So most of our colors are going to be, you know, in this range, probably less than 0.7. So like 0.7 is going to be like a highlight. So let's adjust our picture. So we want this a little bit brighter. So as you can see, as I adjust this up, you'll notice that our highlights now start peaking, and not peaking, sorry. They start hitting that 0.7 range, and then you'll also notice that our highlights really do look like a shimmer, and unfortunately though, we've brought up some of our lows. So I know, because I was looking at the scene, that this area here is actually darker than it is in this picture, which means our contrast is a little bit too low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also adjust our contrast a little bit. I'll maybe go here. That way we get much darker shadows. Now, you want to be very careful. In a bright scene, your shadows might actually be not black. You don't want to just fill up the histogram. You want it to look correct. Now that we've edited our picture, It looks very blown out here in the preview, but that's not what it looks like on the screen, to reiterate. Now we're going to do an export. So we're going to go to output, and I have only done a video output directly from Blender. So what you want to do is go to encoding. You want to select either AV1 or H.265, whichever one you want. Make sure you have 10 or 12-bit color. This is 10-bit, so I'm going to select 10-bit. And now we can, set the end frame, and we can render. So if you go to render, render animation, you'll notice the preview here, this picture renderer is also bright and HDR, just like the scene view. Our video will render out and everything will be happy. Now, for someone who's actually doing real work, you probably want to be doing like a EXR image or a video. Just make sure under color, EXR something. Just make sure your color management is always follow scene. That way you get the appropriate output, so that when you upload to YouTube or whatever, everything still works. Same thing here with video. You want to make sure it's follow scene. Awesome. So that pretty much sums it up.